Damn. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Louie. I'm about to fuck this joint up. Let's go. Damn. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Louie. I'm about to fuck this joint up. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
You muted.
Alrighty, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so got a little bit some technical difficulties going on, guys. So I'm going to scratch the intro and jump straight into it. YouTube, what's going on? It's Juan Gotti here with yet another Washington Commanders live stream. And I have a very, very special guest with me tonight, a pioneer of this community, Louie T from Louie T Network, man. What's going on?
Hey, man, it's a pleasure and a blessing to be here, Juan. I appreciate you for having me on the show. And I'm excited about this season, as I know you are as well. And so I'm ready to dig in, man, and see what you got.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. For the first time in my lifetime, I'm having serious expectations for this team. And that says a lot from where we came from just 2.5 years ago, 2019, man. So we're gonna get straight into it. First, I want to get to know a little bit about you. That's what I do with all my guests here, man. So you've been at this thing for a while, and just try to take me back to the beginning times. What was this community like, if there was one, or were you like the only one on YouTube covering the Washington Redskins?
So when I started, August will be a decade. And when I started back in 2012, there literally was the TTC. It was the community trash talking circle, whatever you want to call it. And we had one guy that was big. I'm trying to remember his name. He never showed his face, but he was the representative for the TTC. I can't remember his name, but that was really the extent of what was on YouTube in terms of NFL content. It was just a lot of TTC guys, people jumping on YouTube, talking trash, making bets with people. There was really nobody actually covering the league itself and, breaking down teams, the draft, all that stuff. Like my draft videos used to do really well because nobody was doing it. Right? Yeah. As time progressed, obviously more and more people started to gravitate towards YouTube and talking about their favorite team. So, it grew. Probably I'd say about my 5th year doing it is when I started to see more people starting to, start channels and things of that nature. So it was really fascinating when I first started because there was no blueprint. There was no template. There was no one to look at and say, hey, this is how so-and-so is doing it. So maybe, I could kind of follow in that person's footsteps. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff, all the technical things behind the scenes, nothing. I was a newbie. It was all new to me. And I had to learn on the fly, or as they like to say, on the job training. It was rough. I'm not going to lie to you. It was rough, but it made me a better content creator and made me, what I am today. And it also helps me to continue to grow, because I know what the struggle looks like. I know what it's like to put out a video and get, 25 views, and so I can relate to someone that's on the come up, who's putting in the work, that's grinding, not always getting the results that you're looking for, but, there's light at the end of the tunnel. If you continue to work hard, if the content is good. And that was the thing that I always knew. I always knew I had great content. It was just getting people to my channel, getting people to find me. That was the tough part. And and honestly, to this day, it's still a struggle. You know what I mean? Right. Because I feel like there's still a lot of people that don't know the channel, haven't accessed the channel. So I always just feel like if I can just get them to the channel, I got them. But, that's part of the struggle, but I wouldn't change any part of the process, because again, it's helped me, it's molded and shaped me into what I am today as a content creator. So,
yeah, definitely. Great story, man. And you said it wasn't no blueprint, but now you're the blueprint. You're the blueprint, man. A lot of people come to you to ask to see what you're doing, and you're really like the foundation of this. And I know that has to feel good in a way, man, because you're the guy that pretty much started this whole thing. How does that feel as you're like kind of the OG of this community?
It makes me feel old. No, seriously. It does feel good. It does feel good. But in the sense of like accomplishing something that at a time, at that particular time that really wasn't tapped into, it felt good to start something from the ground up. You know what I mean? That said, I enjoy what everybody is doing. You know what I mean? I enjoy the fact that, people are, deciding, you know what, I can do this too. And come out of the shadows, jump in front of a camera and get behind a mic and start doing it themselves. I love to see the numbers growing. I love this community that it's growing. And like I've said numerous times, I may have been the OG, as a lot of you like to say, but and I may have inspired some of you, but the real meat and potatoes of the situation is that it still takes you as an individual to decide, I can do this. A lot of people think they can do this. It's not easy being a content creator. Everybody looks at someone and says, oh, I can do that. And then, they start or they start trying to put together the pieces to start, and they realize this is not as easy as I thought. So I've always said that what I've done effectively is I've gotten all of the fans in one spot. Mm-hmm. And now you guys can jump in at any point and, they can find you too. If you like Louie T Network, then you should like this. You should like Juan Gotti Talking Sports. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how everything has gone. And I just love to see it, man. It's great to see the growth that is taking place since I, first jumped into this thing almost a decade ago.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like this specific community, the Washington Commanders with our YouTube community, it's pretty much one of the healthiest ones because like you go to other teams' communities and you see the fans and the content creators kind of battling with each other, and we're all just helping each other, and that's why I commend you guys like yourself, Ed Oliver, and Street Scores, the big dogs of this community, willing to help out the smaller content creators with like, and you're not asking for anything in return. That's why I respect you guys so much, man. And now we're going to transition into something a little bit more fun for you. So I have a trivia question for you. Okay. Like I told you off stream, I'm young, so I can't dig that deep into the glory days, man. So we're just going to keep it pretty much simple. It should be easy for you. Now, I don't know. So try to think back to 2015. Here goes the question. 2015 and Washington's route of their comeback win versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Which player was the one that recovered the onside kick?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't know that. To be honest with you, I didn't even remember it was an onside kick in that game. I'm gonna say that it was a receiver. And on that roster, I'll say Pierre Garçon.
Pierre Garçon. Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
Now I'm gonna tell you this. When I had to do the research for this question, I thought it was Ryan Grant. I don't know why I always thought it was Ryan Grant, but the answer was Trenton Robinson, safety, number 34.
Trenton Robinson. Yeah, I would have never guessed. Onside kick. The last thing I was thinking about was the onside kick.
Yeah, I couldn't have made it too easy, but in that game it was so electrifying because I'm telling you, man, I was watching the game with my dad, and I'm like, we're down, we're mad and stuff like that, but I'm like, for some reason I just felt something special about that. I'm like, we're gonna come back, man. We're gonna come back, and we were starting to score. I believe it was 24-14 at the start of the third quarter, and Jay Gruden called the onside kick, and we recovered it. And ever since then, we took off. I think it was Jamison Crowder and then Jordan Reed to seal it, or if it was Ryan Grant and then Jordan Reed. All I know is, man, that game was amazing. And Kirk Cousins with his very special word, man. And speaking of Kirk, he's coming back here this year. So now, the last question that I have for you, another fun one, and I'm going to share mine too. What is your worst memory as a Washington fan from a game experience, like a heartbreaking, crushing, just left you, like man, just down. And I know it's a lot of them. I know it is. It's a lot of them because there's a lot for me. But for me personally, man, the one that just left me heartbroken, there's so many, but the one that just crushed me was 2016 versus the New York Giants, where Kirk Cousins just crushed my heart, man. Just threw the game winning the game sealing interception for the Giants. I believe it was Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, and just sucked the energy out of FedEx Field and just killed my dreams. Why was it so special for me? Because I'm like, the NFC East has some history that we can make 3 teams. That's the year the Cowboys was just amazing. Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott's rookie year,
right.
And then the Giants, they got in the playoffs, and we had some history that we could have set right there, and it would have been back-to-back postseason bursts for us.
Right.
And it just crushed me, man. I was so sad, like for multiple days, and that's just one of many heartbreaks that I've had. So for you, what would that be?
That was a good one. I wasn't as crushed about that one because I kind of saw that one coming. The week of practice wasn't good. There was bickering. Deshaun Jackson didn't want to practice. There was a lot of foolishness going on going into that game. So I wasn't shocked. Disappointed, yeah. But let's see. There have been some games where we haven't been good enough for me to really be invested to the point where I'm distraught. Yeah. I think the last time I felt that way about a game was probably Seattle 2012, Robert Griffin III getting injured, because it was crazy. I was watching Robert Griffin III highlights. I don't know why I was on Facebook, and somebody had posted, reposted the highlights of his rookie season. And my God, he was really good. Even more so than him, Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan were outstanding. If you watch his highlights, it's the same 3 plays over and over again. The same 3 plays, and we're just killing defenses because you got to account for his legs. But I just remember very vividly that playoff game, they couldn't stop us on offense. Yeah. It was 14-0. We went right down the field the first 2 possessions, boom, boom, and scored touchdowns. And if Robert doesn't get hurt, and I remember it so vividly, he rolls out to his right to throw a pass, and he completes the pass. But as he completes the pass, he jumps in the air, he comes down, he starts limping. That was the beginning of the end in that game. Had he stayed healthy in that football game, we beat Seattle. I think the next week we go on the road, and I think we can take Atlanta because we played them in the regular season that year. That's the game that Robert suffered a concussion, and Kirk came in and wasn't able to get it done. But we played them tough. We would have gone to Atlanta and won. I don't think we would have beaten San Francisco in the NFC Championship game, but to even be talking about an NFC Championship game and Washington in the same sentence is crazy. Yeah. So to think that we were really that close, that was the one that sucked the life out of me. And I think it even was a gut punch because even though it really started in the Baltimore game when he got injured, and then the Cleveland game with Kirk playing so well and him feeling like it was a whole different playbook for Kirk, that injury really set off a chain of events that was the beginning of the end for him in Washington. And what he could have been, all of that died that night on that turf at FedEx Field. So for me, it would be that Seattle Seahawks game in 2012.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because for me, that was crushing too, also, because I remember watching that game vividly too. And I'm like, man, like just looking back on it almost a decade later, if not, it's like, bro, if RG3 could have stayed healthy, no, I'm not saying we would have won a Super Bowl by now, but I'm pretty sure we would have had a couple of playoff berths and with not an NFC Championship appearance, because the guy was so good and the offense for him was just amazing. And all of that just cope with how he acted off the field and, with the coaching staff too. So he wasn't 100%, the innocent one in that relationship too. Right. He's a part of the reason why that relationship spoils so quickly. Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, man, a very fun way to open up the show, man. Again, that 2016 for me though was just very, very crushing, man. Just because the way it ended, bro. Just the way it ended. So I want to jump straight into the good times, I guess, or the what we think is going to be the good times this year. Okay, we've talked a lot this offseason about this offense, just this team, and how special we think this unit can be, man. And for me, a big reason why I believe that, not just because the talent that we assembled, but the day Ron Rivera stepped foot into this team, he told us fans it's going to take 3 to 5 years to change this culture. And the first 2 years for me, of course, you're in the mix of it, and you want to see them be successful. You know, them having to actually go through the rebuild process goes to the back of your mind when you're watching games in 2020 slip away from you, and then last year slip away from you, games that and we could have won. But all that build it up for this first year for me personally, where I think this is the first year we have to have legitimate expectations for this team to be successful, man. I really do. And this is the first year that I'm expecting something, not just because of talent, but because of what Ron Rivera said and what this schedule looked like. And you echoed that a lot. The schedule couldn't have been laid out more easier for us, man. And it's hard to not see this team take advantage of that with this talent on this roster. So what do you have to say about that?
So I wouldn't say the schedule is laid out easy for us as much as it's just a really good schedule. Like I hate to use the term easy or we should win this game or that game, because again, as I always like to say, those teams are looking at us like food. You know, we're looking at them like food. They're looking at us like food. Somebody's going to eat, but by no means are we the Green Bay Packers where we're supposed to look at Jacksonville and say, well, that's a win. Detroit on the road, that's a win. But those are games that are very winnable. It's not Buffalo at Buffalo like early in the season last year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a game where you go in and you say, all right, we got a legitimate chance of winning this game. You know, we should be favored, you know, going into that game. Don't know if we're favored in the Jacksonville game or not. But at the end of the day, I feel like all the stars are aligned this year. And when Ron first took this job, one of the things that I said to myself, the expectation that I set, was that this team will be competitive in 3 years. Because when Ron got here, we were a train wreck. We were 3-13. We were one of the worst teams in football. We didn't know what our quarterback situation was. Our roster was a mess. And there was a lot of cleaning up to do. And Ron's first job, you know, that he claimed that he wanted to take care of was changing the culture. So a lot of that was, you know, cleaning up the roster as well, gaining depth. And then slowly but surely, we started getting blue chip players, guys that we really feel like are, you know, better than what we're accustomed to having on the roster. And so we've put ourselves in this position now with the roster, you know, having filled some gaps. I still think there are holes in this roster. It's not a roster that's necessarily a Super Bowl roster, but I think it's a roster that can compete at a very high level if it stays healthy. Yeah. And when you couple the roster, some of the improvements that have been made, especially on the offensive side of the football, we've struggled offensively well before Ron got here. We've struggled since Ron has gotten here. We've just struggled on the offensive side of football. Really haven't been a real formidable offense since probably the early stages of maybe 2017, that final year of Kirk. So it's been a mess here offensively. Alex Smith was terrible offensively. You know, all the quarterbacks that we went through, Case Keenum, Dwayne Haskins, were terrible in 2019. Same, you know, for 2020, we went through a full gamut. 4 different guys started games, including Taylor Heineke, a playoff game. 2021, mostly Heineke, got a little sprinkle of Ryan Fitzpatrick to start the season off. But the constant was the fact that we couldn't score points, you know, that the offense wasn't good enough. So to see all of the changes made offensively, all the weapons that we can put on the field at the receiver position, you know, the depth that we have at the tight end position, that went from a weakness when Ron first got here, where we didn't even know what the tight end position looked like, to now it could be a strength for us if some of these guys pan out. And then the running back position is also looking like an upgraded position. There's just so much to be excited about on the offensive side of the football if the defense can just play the way that it did. Not even get back to, I'm thinking with this schedule, however, it could get back potentially to the 2020 form where they were dominant and actually won us games at times. But even if it's just back end of 2021, okay, when we came off the bye against Tampa and Carolina and Seattle and Vegas, even if it's just that type of defense. Bend but don't break, keep teams out of the end zone, opportunities present themselves, take advantage, that kind of thing. If we're able to do that and the offense has that uptick that we're expecting, we're going to be a dangerous football team, especially, again, as I mentioned, with the schedule laid out. And it's not just the teams that we play, it's how the schedule is set up. There aren't any stretches of, long trips on the road. We don't go out on the West Coast a ton. It's home, it's away. It's home, it's away. It's home, it's away. It's home, it's away. It's like that all the way up until week 10 and 11, and then you finish up the season, unlike last year where there were a bunch of road games towards the back end of the season. We finished up the season 3 out of 4 at home. So everything is set up. You got a bye at the end of the season that will give you a chance to replenish and hit that stretch run. There's so much to like about how everything is aligned. Now it's just up to us to take advantage of the opportunities that's, being presented to us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said, man. A couple key points that I like what you said. One, I want to go back to 2019 where you said, look where we came from. I mean, bro, in that preseason of 2019, I'm on my channel. This is when I very first started. I'm talking about Robert Davis being a number 2 receiver. Robert Davis, I'm like, okay, Robert Davis is looking like something good, and that's terrible now that we look back on it, because look where we're at now.
Right.
And everything you said is right on. The offense, you talked about health, man. Health has been a thing for Washington. It's been a problem for I don't know how long, man. So Curtis Samuel, a lot of people want to make a lot of it, and I have to tell people all the time, he wasn't injury prone. I hate when people just believe he was injury prone just because of what happened last year. They're already giving up on him, saying he's a bust. He wasted money on him. Number 10 is Kirsten Watson.
Yeah,
I'm like,
heard that a lot this offseason. Yeah.
Relax, man. And this one where they just had the workout in California, Wise and Curtis Samuel there. Bro, it was voluntary. They're on their break. Like, I don't know, man. A lot of fans, I understand why, just because they want to see him, but he got to relax. But I do understand he has to stay healthy. We are paying this man to go out there and perform. And last year was very unfortunate, but I think if this offense can stay healthy with a quarterback that's able to distribute the ball really well, and that is being overhated line. We're going to talk about that too. I think this offense could be really, really good. Johan Dawson is a guy that I wasn't really too fond of, when we drafted him. Now, this is my draft process, okay? I said I want us to trade back. I want us to trade back, and I want us to get a game-changing player at whatever spot we traded back at. At first, we're at 11, and I'm on live stream with Pedro Schmidt. We live streamed the draft together, and I'm like, this draft was laying out perfect for us. I mean, Kyle Hamilton was still there. I know Jameson Williams had the knee injury, but he was still there. Chris Olave was a guy that I really liked and wouldn't have minded us drafting him. He was there. I'm like, this is planning out exactly how I like it to. We have a lot of options there at 11, and then we trade back. I was even more ecstatic about it because we recuperated draft capital from the Carson Wentz trade. And then we draft Johan Dawson. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not much of a college football watcher. I don't do the deep dive into the draft and pre-draft. So I didn't know much about Johan Dawson. And I'm like, Johan Dawson, really? Really? Like, I didn't hate the pick, but I didn't love it. But then I deep dive into this guy. I see the kind of person he is. They did exactly what I wanted them to do. They drafted a game changer. That's what I wanted them to do, and trade back and got draft capital. So I deep dive into Johan Dawson, and I'm like, the guy screams off Terry McLaurin to me, not because of the way he plays, but the character he is off the field, the human he is. He's very quiet, shows up and handles his business, not to mention my man just graduated from Penn State with a degree. So the guy is a very intelligent person, man, and he just seems like a person that shows up and just does his business like Terry McLaurin. And you hear Deandre Brown talk about him being very quiet like he was last year and just showing up and being about your business. So first, I want to ask you, what was your grade on Johan Dawson? Were you high on him coming out of Penn State? And how did you like the pick, and where are your stance on him now after seeing him have a couple OTA sessions and mini camp sessions?
So nothing has changed with the way I feel about him. I've always felt like he was a really good receiver in what was a deep receiver draft class. He was my number 4 rated wide receiver in this draft class. He was the 5th receiver taken in this draft, if I'm not mistaken. The first receiver was the USC receiver.
Drake London.
Drake London. And then it was the Ohio State receiver, Garrett Wilson. Then it was the receiver, Jamison Williams. And then it was Chris Olave. So it was funny how it happened, because in my mock draft and the way everybody kind of saw the first round falling, he wasn't a guy that started to be talked about until we got to the back end of the first round, right around Green Bay, So I think that's what kind of caught me off guard, was that the receiver position got pushed up. When Detroit decided to trade up for Jamison Williams, it changed everything, because at that point, every team that needed a receiver was like, yo, let me go get mine right now, So when New Orleans traded up, Detroit was like, okay, we can't wait. We got to go get ours. I don't think anybody saw 4 straight receivers being selected, or 4 out of 5 picks were receivers. It was 8, 9, or 8, 10, 11, and 12. I don't think anybody saw that happening that way. And what it did was it put Washington in a position where they were like, hey, we need to get ours as well. And I think I told this story while I was live the next day after the draft. I had some intel that Green Bay picked up the phone and hit us, and they wanted us to trade back again. They wanted to come up and select the kid from Arkansas, Treylon Burks. And they had offered us, a couple of picks to move back again. And Washington wasn't comfortable doing that, because they knew at that point, if they traded back again, they could miss out on receiver altogether in the first round and miss out on Johan Dawson. So I think it was the right thing to do. You already recouped the picks, as you mentioned, from the Carson Wentz deal. Got yourself back in a position where you weren't, as pressed in the second round now to make a tough decision, because now you have a 3rd round pick, which we didn't before. So changed everything. And I love the pick then. I was surprised because, again, in my mind, and this is what happens when you do the draft thing and you keep regurgitating the same thing over and over again. A lot of people were brainwashed into thinking Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, or Kyle Hamilton or bust. Like, if we don't get one of those 3 players, how did we mess this up, right? And, the fact that Hamilton and Olave were on the board at 11 and we traded back, and then, neither one of those guys were there. Actually, the Saints came up. We knew they were coming up for Olave, right? So it was just fascinating how all of that transpired. But they loved Johan Dawson the entire time. He was their 2nd receiver, 3rd receiver on their board. The first receiver for them was Drake London. The 2nd receiver was the Ohio State receiver, Garrett Wilson. And then Johan Dawson was 3rd on their board. So they really loved him. So to move back, pick up draft capital, and still get the guy that you felt comfortable getting. And the other 2 guys were already gone at 11, right? So to get the guy that you would have drafted had you had to stand pat at 11, to move back, get draft capital, and still get that guy, they probably felt elated about that.
Yeah, and when you put it like that and just see that this is the guy that they want, forget what I think, forget what the fans think, but if Ron Rivera and these guys truly believe they hit on the gym with any draft pick, whether it's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, which in this draft class that we had, it's a lot of controversial picks amongst the fan base. I don't care what I think. If they truly feel like this guy's going to be a game changer for us, go get your guy. I that's how I think, and that's how I am. And now looking back on it a month and a half later, too, I like the pick. I really do, just for the simple fact of the kind of person that he is, and just how, and of course they're going to hype him up because they're their rookie, but the way they talked about him and the way his peers talk about him, De'Ami Brown, the guy just seems like a pro already. He hasn't taken a snap in the NFL. They talked about him having the best hands coming out of this draft, the most pro-ready receiver coming out of this draft. And I'm excited, man. I really am. And that picture of him finally meeting Terry McLaurin, because that was just a big thing. Why isn't he meeting Terry? Why we want to see them and Terry together, him and Terry together. I'm like, Terry's dealing with his negotiations. We understand why they're going to meet. And just to see that picture, man, I'm pretty sure you've seen it. Just a big smile came on my face, man, just because that offensive firepower that we see and Carson Wentz leading it, and Johan Dawson, a sneaky guy, and Cam Sims, who for years now I've been saying is going to have a breakout year. And when I mean breakout year, just 500 yards for Cam Sims, man, about a couple touchdowns, because he's a guy that I don't want to get rid of. Of course, he isn't a receiver one, but he's a guy that you need. You know, it's always those guys on your team that you need, just rotational guys and stuff like that, right? But yeah, man, I'm excited about this offense, and the Johan Dawson pick just seems like it was a slam dunk, and we'll see how it plans out. But I'm going to take a quick pause here to answer this super chat here. Philip B, thank you so much for the super chat. I really do appreciate it. He says, "What's good, fam? What's going on, Philip B? How you doing?" I appreciate you for tuning into the show and super chatting. Thank you so much. And now we're back. So yeah, Johan Dawson, Terry McLaurin, Cam Sims, De'Ami Brown, Curtis Samuel, right? But now we have a quarterback that we genuinely think can distribute this ball and just be that guy that we've been missing since, like you mentioned, Kirk Cousins, you know, and I believe that last year of Kirk 2017, we had the number 2 passing offense. And I believe a lot of that is due to him and the offense around him and Sean McVay, who we found out is just this mastermind, one of the best coaches in football, you know, and I'm pretty sure a lot of guys probably knew that already. But how good has he been, right? But this is the first time in a while that we've had a lot of offensive firepower, and I'm going back to the quarterback position here. In my opinion, right, Carson Wentz, bro, he's too overhated as of right now. And what I mean by that is, I was a person, even when he was on the Eagles, I always thought he was better than Dak Prescott. I always thought he was. And I give Dak Prescott his flowers. He is the best quarterback in his division as of right now. But I always thought he was better than Dak Prescott. Then the turmoil happened in Philly. And then last year you come out, he goes to the Colts, and you hear Jim Irsay talking bad about him. He didn't want him and stuff like that. And he goes out there and still throws for 27-7. And I know a lot of people, that comes with some asterisks here. Oh, we had Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. The offensive line was really, really well. You know, I understand that. But my thing is, I think Carson Wentz is overhated as of right now. I mean, you see some of these lists, and I know we don't want to look too heavy into these lists, bro, but they got Daniel Jones over Carson Wentz in some of these lists. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. I'm like, this guy was just an MVP frontrunner. He would have won it if he didn't tear his ACL versus the Rams a couple years ago, and he practically led the Eagles to a playoff run, you know? And how are you feeling about Carson Wentz initially the trade and now a couple months later? And what do you hear about these outside noise, these Eagles fans trying to trash Carson Wentz like they weren't just praising him as their king? We seen this guy demolish us a million times. I mean, that Monday night game, we think we have him wrapped up, and then just
ducks out of the whole pot.
Man, this guy, he's good, like he is. So what do you have to say about all three of that I just said? Your initial reaction, how you feel now, and these Eagles fans and Cowboys fans trying to make him seem out to be just this bum all of a sudden.
So initially, I was indifferent about the trade. Like, I didn't know how to feel, because going into the offseason, I knew we were going to be desperate. I talked about it a million times. Like, this offseason reeks of desperation, because Ron Rivera literally told anybody that would listen that we need a quarterback, you know, and if y'all are selling, we're listening. And so we were going to come away with something. And the biggest issue was nobody wanted to come to Washington. You know, it was a situation where if you had a no trade clause, you could say, I'm not going to Washington. So they had to go after the one guy that didn't have a no trade clause. They couldn't say no. I mean, I talked about this before. Even Jimmy Garoppolo told his handlers, I don't want to go to Washington. Like, we don't want your stinking ass. But the fact that he could even, you know, fix his lips to say he doesn't want to go to Washington, it's embarrassing. So I think out of necessity, they went after Carson Wentz. And it wasn't, at the time, it felt like, oh man, that's really desperate. You know, this is a guy that was, you know, pushed out of Philly, couldn't handle the spotlight and the stage in Philly, really crumbled and succumbed to the pressures of getting them to the playoffs, but never being healthy to lead them through the playoffs. And Nicholas Foles winning it all. And, you know, when they drafted Jalen Hurts, they had to know that his psyche was fragile at that point, but I don't think they cared. They figured if Carson can just stay healthy, we're good. If he can't, at least we got a guy behind him. But it was more than that to Carson Wentz. And that's kind of why he unraveled in 2020. And so he gets shipped off to Indy. You're thinking, oh man, this is the perfect marriage. He's teaming back up with his old quarterbacks coach and Frank Reich, who's the head coach in Indy. Like, this is a match made in heaven. It's a small market. It's close to where he's from in North Dakota. Like, this is everything he could have dreamed of. Indianapolis was the perfect spot for Carson Wentz. And then, they at one point in the season started off struggling, like 1-4. Then they get hot. They're one of the hottest teams in football. Nobody wants to play them. They're running the football. The defense is filthy. And they're destined to make the playoffs. It's not even a matter of if they're going to make the playoffs. It's who wants to play them when they get in there, because they're doing the things that we always talk about lends itself to winning come January into February, which is run the football and play defense. And then all of a sudden he gets COVID. Mm-hmm. And the reason Jim Irsay doesn't like him is because he wanted him to get vaccinated. Any of these religious dudes are going to be anti-vaxxers. Kirk Cousins was the same exact way because they don't believe in those vaccines. And that's fine. Everybody has their own right to feel the way that they feel. But Jim Irsay felt like all his players, especially the quarterback, the guy that has the most, impact on the game, needed to be vaccinated. And Carson Wentz wasn't going to do it. He gets, COVID, doesn't miss a game, but misses a ton of practice time, doesn't play well against Vegas, but played well enough for them to win. Defense gave it up at the end of that game. And then the entire team laid an egg against Jacksonville. Everybody wants to point to that Jacksonville game. I don't think a Colts quarterback has won in Jacksonville since 2014. That's going all the way back to Andrew Luck. Phillip Rivers didn't win there. Jacoby Brissett, whatever quarterback you want to name, he didn't win in Jacksonville. The Jaguars, for some reason, just know how to beat the Indianapolis Colts in Jacksonville. So he fell victim and prey to that as well. And he'll tell you, he didn't play well. The defense didn't play well. The offense didn't play well. But, that whole narrative that was kind of conjured up about Carson Wentz, I feel like they really just piggyback off of all of the smoke that was in Philadelphia. And a lot of that was true. When he was in Philadelphia, his ego was huge. There were cliques and factions in the locker room. He was a part of one. And I don't think he was the best teammate in Philadelphia. And he would tell you that, and he grew from that experience. I think he was an awesome teammate in Indianapolis. I think proof is there with the teammates after he was traded, wishing him well and being upset that he got traded. And so I feel like there has been this stigma attached to Carson Wentz that I don't think has been just. You could talk about his play on the field and say he's been erratic up and down. Sure. The 27-7 last year, those are great statistics. But, you watch some of those games, he was merely a driver, merely a passenger, I should say, in some of those games. I still felt like when big throws needed to be made, he made a lot of those last year. Mm-hmm. And for them to sit here and act as if, the reason they didn't make the playoffs was because of Carson Wentz, that's asinine. And, it's easy for Eagles fans. And just a caveat, heading into the 2020 season, Carson Wentz was the best quarterback in the NFC East, hands down. No one was even debating that. There was no conversation. We did Super Friends stream going into that season, and we all agreed unanimously that Carson Wentz was the number one quarterback in the division heading into that season. So the fact that Eagles fans have done a whole 180 on him, and some of them, I've had Eagles fans DM me, hit me up like, yo, y'all got a good quarterback. If he plays to his full capabilities, he might be the best quarterback in the division. I've had Eagles fans reach out. It's not all of them. But, the ones that are salty, the ones that feel some type of way about how it ended in Philadelphia, they want to see him, perform poorly. They want to be vindicated. Oh, he stunk when he left here, and here's proof. So you're going to hear all of that. At the end of the day, Carson Wentz has to do a great job of tuning out the noise because it will never be any louder than it will be in Week 10 on a Monday night at Lincoln Financial. Okay. Yeah. It's going to be crazy at the Link. And they're going to be talking all kinds of nonsense about his daughters, about his wife, things that are out of bounds. They're going to say everything to try to get under their skin and force him to play poorly. Hopefully we get the win in Week 3. I'm guaranteeing that already, but he'll have that experience. There's going to be a ton of Eagles fans at FedEx in Week 3. So it's not like it'll be his first exposure to Eagles fans. He would have already run into them at FedEx, but it's going to be 50 million times worse on that Monday night. And I hope he's mentally prepared. It's going back to Indy too, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard and company have brainwashed that fan base into thinking Carson Wentz, you know, was the problem. They scapegoated him. And I think a lot of those fans bought into that. So I think they might have a little bit of animosity towards him as well. So to your point, I think the Carson Wentz hate has been overdone. I think he is good enough to lead a team to the playoffs. He's done it numerous times in his career. And if I think, honestly, this is the best supporting cast he's had in his career. And if the defense can just do their part, special teams as well, I think we got a chance to really silence the haters. And I've said, keep the same energy you got right now. Stay on that side. If you're on that side, stay on that side.
Yeah, I agree, man. I definitely think the hate for Carson Wentz is like too much as of right now. I mean, you talk about the supporting cast that he's had. This is the best in his career. I mean, you go back to last year, his top receiver was Michael Pittman, who I like a lot, but he isn't no Terry McLaurin. You know, who else? Mo Alley Cox and Zach Pascal and Parrish Campbell, who has he even played over 20 games in his career, man? The guy seems to always be over the shelf, man, on the shelf.
I don't think
so. It's like, okay, I understand. You know, Carson Wentz, like you said, up and down, has his times where he may have an ego issue, but I think he's learned and he grew from that. He said that in his presser. He grew from that. And another big thing that I really think the reason why I believe this is going to work out so well here, Carson Wentz and Washington, Ron Rivera made it abundantly clear in the video that they showed him arriving in Washington. Hey, I want you to know you're somewhere where you're wanted. Right. I don't know if Carson Wentz ever felt like he was wanted in Indianapolis, but now he's here. I feel like he can be comfortable. He can be relaxed and just go play Carson Wentz ball. And when he's able to do that, we know up close and personal that he's able to be one of the best quarterbacks in football, man. So right. I couldn't agree more with that. Fat Bastard with the super chat. He says, is Carson the best quarterback we've had in Dan's tenure? You want to take that? I believe in my short, tenure of being able to really understand ball and under Dan Snyder, 99 was when he took over. I want to say yes, but the Kirk Cousins thing is still up there. How do you feel about that? How would you answer that?
No, I would say he's the best. Obviously, he's not the most talented. I think Robert Griffin III was the most talented raw ability that we've ever had. I think he's a close second to him in terms of talent. But in terms of just production, obviously Kirk Cousins has all the records, in the record books. Brad Johnson was a damn good quarterback, ultimately a Super Bowl winning quarterback with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've had some guys here over the years. I mean, to me, it's a pretty short list, though. It's not a very lengthy list at all. It's probably Brad Johnson, Kirk Cousins, Mark Brunell, Robert Griffin III, and I mean, even McNabb, if you want to count his time in Philadelphia, but here in Washington, he was terrible. So it's a short list. He's pretty high on that list, but I don't think he's number one.
I mean, that just goes to show you how terrible we've been at quarterbacks. Am I right? You know, Fat Bastard with another super chat. He says, is this the best the wide receiver trio Wentz has had? And I'm pretty sure we've answered that on multiple, a lot of times. And he says Wentz over Kirk Cousins. Yes, I believe so. We just talked about that. This is the most talent Carson Wentz has had. I mean, he carried a 2019 Philadelphia Eagles team to the playoffs. And I personally think, what was it? I don't know if it was 10-9. I know it was a very low scoring game. And then he gets hurt. Jadeveon Clowney takes him out versus Seattle. I think if he stays healthy, they go on to win that game.
Right.
And who was a part of that wide receiver core? Was it Greg Ward? And I believe, those guys. And come on, man. And he takes them to the playoffs. And I believe that year he threw for the most yards in his career, which was 4,000. So the guy has talent and he can do it with nobody. So just imagine what he can do with this unit, So, I believe this is the best trio he has had. Corey with the super chat. Thank you so much. Corey LK78 says, I think even if Carson balls out, NFC East rival fans and media will downplay it. Our recent and past QBs debacles are too fresh in their minds. Me personally, I think that goes into another point why I believe he's overhated is because he plays for Washington. I swear, I believe if he played for somewhere else, yes, he would probably get hate, but it wouldn't be just as much, just because we're such a pushover and we're such an easy person to pick on as of right now, that the hate for Carson Wentz is more just because he plays for Washington. How would you answer that?
I think that's just us being sensitive, because as a fan base, we always feel like we're getting picked on, and sometimes it's deserved. Obviously, when you have an owner like Daniel Snyder, you want to disassociate yourself from him. Like, hey, he has no bearing, or he's not a great reflection of us as a fan base. But it's impossible to do that. He's the owner of the team, and it's so easy to not like Washington with all the things you hear about him. But Ron has done his best to try and overshadow all of the things that are going on off the field. It's just impossible, because there's always something with this organization. So the players feel it sometimes, but at the end of the day, I don't think Wentz has gotten more hate because he's in Washington or necessarily. I just feel like wherever he went, people were going to feel the same way they felt about him, which is, hey, this is your last chance, bro. You don't get it done, you're done as a starter in this league. I mean, Troy Aikman came out and said what I said immediately after the trade was made. Very first video, as it's breaking news, I'm like, yo, this is it. Like, he has to knock it out of the park this year. That's why Washington was willing to eat the $28 million. If they were confident in Carson Wentz, like if they believed in him blindly, like, they would have extended him this year. They wouldn't have eaten $28 million. They would have given him an extension, brought that cap number down. They wouldn't have had to cut Eric Flowers and Matt Ioannidis and Landon Collins, but they were willing to part ways with those guys to see if Wentz was the right guy, and they were willing to take the $28 million cap hit because they aren't sure, So I think he would have gotten the same, type of heat. There is the East Coast bias. Obviously, him playing in the nation's capital, him playing just in the NFC East in general is going to bring more attention to it than if he were in, say, Cleveland, or say if he was in Detroit, where it'd be an afterthought. So I think there is a little validity to that because it's the NFC East and there is an NFC East bias. But at the end of the day, I just think it's just Carson Wentz and his journey in the NFL. And I think he's got a lot to prove. Yeah. And hopefully he's going to have that chip on his shoulder and looking to go out and prove a lot of these naysayers wrong.
Yeah, and I think he's going to do that. Like, again, the reason why I believe so is not just the talent, but just the way he spoke at the presser. And again, Ron Rivera is saying he's here, he's somewhere where he's winning. I believe that's just a huge breath he can take now. He doesn't have to feel pressure. He can just go out there and play Carson Wentz ball. So Fat Bastard again, or excuse me, Corey again with the super chat. He says Commanders will put the NFL on notice this year. Hell, I hope so, man. The noise around the locker room, the excitement is there. Again, for me, this is the first time in my lifetime that I'm having serious expectations for this team to go out there and perform. So I'm right there with you. And now, Fat Bastard, again, thank you so much. He says, I think Wentz has the potential to be top 15. For me, if I was ranking my quarterbacks, I think he's already right there in that mix just because I still think Carson Wentz is pretty solid. I think he is, again, they have him in like the low 26s and 27s.
Yeah, that's
again.
Ridiculous, man.
I don't think he's that bad. I think he's right there in the top 15. I got him like 16, 15, right there in that range. Would you say you have him around there too?
I actually did a quarterback list. If I'm not mistaken, he was at like 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there. Here it is. He was 16. So He's right on the outside of the top 15 looking in. Obviously subject to change, but like you said, he's right in that mix, man. I don't think he's that far off as some people would make him out to be. It's amazing. Justin Fields and Daniel Jones and some of these clowns that they put in front of me. Are you kidding me? Like, I think sometimes when people make lists, they do it to attention grab, right?
Yeah.
To get clicks, to get people talking. We see it all the time. People are looking for the attention. If you're getting any kind of press or people talking about you, whether good or bad, it's beneficial to you. That's how some people think. So if I do something extreme here, like people do it with their mock drafts all the time. have something crazy with their mock draft that nobody else has, just so people can talk about their mock draft. Some of those lists I think are really just to get people talking.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you brought that up because about a month ago, Adam Rank, he's a name that
he's
that
a fantasy football dude. Like I don't even pay attention to Adam Rank, man.
He's a guy that is not very like the monkey. Like I just feel like he has something against us. I mean, because anytime he talks about us, it's just bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a month ago, he did his predictions or whatever, and he has us finishing 3-14, but not just 3-14, but he has us going on a 0-8 start. An 0-8 start to the season. Yeah. And I'm like, I made my video on it. I talked about it. I'm like, okay, I understood what he did. Okay. And I tried to explain it to them. He did exactly what you said. Attention grabbing. He's not serious. There's no way he genuinely thinks the Commanders are going to be 0-8. Right. And NFL knows what they're doing. Yes, this is sports, but at the end of the day, it's also entertainment. So there's just no way Adam Rank truly believes that, right. Because he has a history of just having funny predictions. I mean, this same prediction, and I believe he's a Bears fan. He has the Bears going 10-6 in this very video that I'm talking about. So again, Adam Rank, he's not serious, but that definitely got a lot of fans pissed off and talking just because an 0-8 start, really, like, come on, man.
Mission accomplished. That's what he was thinking.
Because he did it for more. He did it for multiple teams throughout that whole little segment that he had on NFL Network. Now, back to the super chats here. Philip B, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. He says, I think the hate is real. Look at how Joe Jacoby isn't in the Hall of Fame. And Joe Jacoby is one of the greatest offensive linemen here in Washington. We just had that talk the other day. I believe it will go him, then Trent Williams. Because Trent Williams isn't even on the, they're doing the 90th year thing here. And I believe he isn't even one of the players that's on the.
Yeah, that's them being petty. Being petty. There's some animosity there. Obviously, Dan and company don't like the way that, he left the organization. And come on now. He's not one of the top 90 Redskins. Come on, man. Stop playing.
Yeah, that's crazy. And again, Joe Jacoby not been in the Hall of Fame. You have anything to say about that?
Yeah, it's a long time coming. I think he's going to get in this year. It's unfortunate that he had to, get off of the original ballot. Now he's on the ballot for the old school players that didn't make it on the original ballot. It's a shame that it's going to take this because he's going to get in, eventually. And I just hope he's alive to see it. I mean, it's ridiculous that he's being penalized for being on a team that, as he likes to say, didn't have any stars. The offensive line was the, main attraction when it came to the, Washington Redskins back in the 80s when they went to, 3 Super Bowls, won 2 of them, and then won the third and final in the early 90s. The Hogs were the constant, with all of that. And for him to not be in the Hall of Fame, he should have been the first one in the Hall of Fame. And, Russ Grimm is already in the Hall of Fame, but and Russ was an awesome offensive lineman in his own right, but he should have been in first. I mean, Joe Jacoby, what he actually had to do and the guys he had to block, are you kidding me? It's a travesty that he hasn't already gotten in, but he'll get in.
Yeah, I think so too. And Fat Bastard again, he says, thank you so much. He says, what do y'all need from Wentz to be okay with extending his stay here? 2021 Wentz, 10 wins, 3,500 yards. Let's hear it. Okay, so I'll go first here. For me, what do I need from Wentz? Just a really, really good season. What I mean by this, I think there's no reason why we shouldn't win at least 10 games. Now, you can win 10 games and still not make the playoffs. And I was watching your show where they asked you a similar question. 10 wins, no playoff berth. Would you extend Wentz? Or, you said it's 2 ways you can look at it. 10 wins, playoff, 10 wins, no playoffs. Would you extend them? Me personally, if he gets us to 10 wins and we make the playoffs, of course you extend him. But if it's 10 wins and he plays well throughout the season, you extend him. I don't know. Me personally, I just think if anyway we have a 10-win season or 11-win season, you have to extend him. The only way I don't think an extension is worthy is if he just goes out there and just trash and just a train wreck, man. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if there's a set number that you put on, wins that will take for him to be back. I think if he just plays well, because he could play extremely well and light up the scoreboard and the defense could be an atrocity.
Yeah.
And we could be losing games 38-35 and 41-33, and he's doing everything he can. And the offense is putting up points, but the defense just isn't any good. I mean, I don't think that's a realistic outcome for the season, but I mean, it's a possibility. When we're having these hypotheticals, anything could happen. He just needs to play well. And when I say play well, I just mean play within the construct of the offense. If the game just needs to be managed, don't go outside of what needs to be done. If this only calls for you to be 14 of 22 for 187 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, and that's good enough to win the game, do that, But then there are going to be weeks where, hey, we need you to go 29 of 41 for 377, 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. And if we need that, we need that, and if he can provide that for us when we need it, I think he's a guy that will be back, not just next year, but for many years to come. As I've said already, I hope that we never see Sam Howell in a Washington uniform in a regular season game unless we're blowing someone out. I would prefer to not see him hit the field, which would mean we figured out our quarterback situation.
Yeah, and again, that just would be a blessing for me, because this would be the first time that I'm seeing, well, I guess Kirk Cousins, but how that ended again, I think we effed that up badly. This would be just a big relief. Carson Wentz being that guy that could be this quarterback for the near future. And Fat Badger said, nah, they put Trent up there today. So, okay. That's good. That's deserving. I don't care how it ended here in Washington. I'm always going to be a big Trent Williams fan because, I mean, he was that dude, and he's continuing to be that dude in San Francisco, okay? So that's good, deserving. DeAndre Taylor, my guy, he says, sup, y'all? How many touchdowns for Cole Turner this season? So for me, Lou, if you didn't know this already, Cole Turner is actually my favorite draft pick from this year's draft class. I have a sense that he can be that receiving tight end for us, that guy that could just, he's a former wide receiver, that guy that could just go throw up and get it for him. And with Logan Thomas most likely going to be on the shelf to start the season, we may depend on him heavy, him and John Bates, to start the season. So for me personally, I don't have a number. I'm just going to throw one out there though for you. Four touchdowns for Cole Turner. But it could definitely be way more, considering the fact that Logan Thomas is going to be on the shelf to start the season. And I don't know when we're expecting him back. I don't know how far along he is with his ACL recovery. So what do you have to say about Cole Turner?
That number sounds good to me. I was going to say 5, anywhere from 3 to 5. I can't see it being any higher than 5. I could see him having, 1 touchdown, because you just, with all of these weapons, and to me, honestly, in order to have a dominant red zone offense, you got to be able to run the football in the red zone. When we were at our best in 2020, we were running the football in the red zone. That's part of the reason we were one of the most efficient red zone offenses in football. We didn't get down there a lot, but when we did, we made it count because Gibson was a monster. Remember, he had like 11 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown in his rookie season. He had a bunch of touchdowns. That was one of the reasons we were so excited about Antonio Gibson after his rookie season, is how many times he touched pay dirt. So if we can get back to that, that's going to take away from some of the receiving touchdowns. I don't care how we get in the end zone. I just want to get in the end zone. So I think, 5 on the high side, 2 on the low side. I think he's going to be a guy, especially early in the season, they're going to try to make a concerted effort to get the football to, similar to in the way that with De'Ami Brown last year, tried to make a concerted effort to get him the football early in the season last year, especially with, as you mentioned, Logan Thomas potentially being on the shelf to start the season off. I think he's a guy that get into the red zone and get to the 5 or the 4-yard line. I think I could see them throwing some back shoulder fades and fades to this dude and seeing if he can go up and get the football. So I can see him having an impact in the red zone.
I like him a lot. I really do. And John Bates is another guy that I'm high on more than a lot of people in this fan base, because he, coming out of Boise State, they said he was just a blocking tight end, right? But he quickly shocked us with his ability to catch the ball. Pete Hainer, tight ends coach previous to Juan Castillo, he said that. He said he can catch the ball. And, during the draft, they didn't mention that a lot. So John Bates is another guy that I wouldn't even mind having to throw it to him a couple times, because, I mean, last year he showed that he can handle it. And with Logan Thomas, like we said, potentially being out, we're going to need those guys. I mean, we may be even talking about Sammy's Reyes, another guy that we don't know how far along he is. Hasn't been much talked about him. But he's another guy that we may have to rely on just because of Logan Thomas being out. Now, I want to transition to the defensive side of the ball. We haven't talked about the defense much. You
Right.
brought up the fact that if we could just get the back end of 21, you know, and it was very unfortunate because week 8, you know, Chase Young obviously wasn't having the season that we thought he was going to have coming off of that defensive rookie of the year performance. But for me, week 8, and some people may say week 7, but week 8 for me versus Denver I'm like, Chase is starting to turn the corner. I could see him maybe finally getting it again. That's the game where I believe he forced a fumble.
At the very end, yep. To give us another chance.
Yeah, and then week 10 versus the Bucks, he just goes down torn ACL. I mean, immediately you talked about it, but immediately everyone knew it was a torn ACL. You know, you can clearly see that him writhing in pain. I mean, it was very unfortunate for Chase, man. And Montez Sweat, everything that went wrong down the stretch of the season just did for us, you know. And the defense, Jack Del Rio, we're going to start with the coach. You know, a lot has been made of Jack Del Rio this offseason with his off-the-field stuff, right?
Right.
How have you assessed Jack Del Rio's first 2 years? Because, I mean, mind you, when we first hired him, it was a lot of expectation, a lot of, Jack Del Rio is a defensive mastermind. I was saying, I don't even know why Oakland ever fired him because he was good for Oakland, in my opinion. It was a lot. And 2020, he was solid. He wasn't as good as a lot of people want to make him out to be. He was good, you know, but he wasn't as good as a lot of people want to say. And then 21, for me, it just felt like he was less aggressive than he was the year prior. What are your first 2 years, and how are you assessing Jack Del Rio? A lot of people saying after this year he could be on the hot seat if he doesn't perform well, which could very well be true, but that's Ron's boy. We know that. So I don't know if that's going to be true or not, but honestly, are you feeling Jack Del Rio still?
I think the jury's still out on Jack Del Rio. I was elated when we got him. You know, having dealt with what we dealt with over the last few years. You know, going all the way back to Joe Barry, and then fast forward into Greg Minuski and dealing with the incompetence at the defensive coordinator position. It was time for a change and a breath of fresh air from someone that just we knew defensive football. With that said, I kind of feel like Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera, to a degree, are stuck in an older age of football where things were, much simpler. You didn't have to defend as much of the field. There weren't as many, groupings being put on the field. 4 wide outs, spread you out, that sort of thing. I think that there are so many guys in the league that are just so creative, that do so much more with less. And that's probably been the thing that I've been most frustrated with our group is we have talent, and I'm not sitting here and making it seem like we're the most talented defensive group in football, because the linebacker position has been lagging behind. The secondary has been okay at best. But when you spend 4 first-round picks across the board on the defensive line, you should be getting the kind of production that we got out of that group in 2020 every year. And it shouldn't be hard to get that production. And I just feel like it's too much of, hey, our guys are going to line up against your guys and win because we got 4 first-round picks. And, hey, the guys across the ball get paid too, and they're really good at their jobs as well. So you have to be creative in how you scheme things up. And I don't think there's a level of creativity that scares anyone that we play. It's pretty much, it is what you think it is. You're getting what you saw on film. And there aren't many wrinkles. There aren't different coverages or looks. Oh, man, this is what they showed. But this is what, when they drop into this is what it is on film. And now it's a different look. You don't get any of that. Chase and Montez, I don't think they've ever rushed from the same side of the football field in their careers. Like, just little nuances like that. I just feel like there's so much more that we can do other than just twist and stunts up front. At the end of the day, Jack Del Rio knows defensive football, as does Ron Rivera. And, they've made adjustments that have worked, including when we were having a tough time stopping the run, going to essentially a bare defensive front, which is just an 8-man box essentially, and just saying, all right, you run on this, putting that extra defensive linemen on the field. But, I feel like there could be more creativity. There could be more aggressiveness at times. I'm not saying go all Jim Haslett and empty the clip, and cost us games being over aggressive defensively. But I think there are times where you're like, come on, man. Daniel Jones is shredding us. Come after him, make him beat us. Like, enough of just standing in zone coverage. Clearly our zone isn't tight enough. He's shredding it. Okay. We blitz him one time and we sack him. Like, go after this dude. Like, it's situations like that really irks me. Same thing with Matt Ryan. Like, I get it. Matt Ryan's a little bit more sophisticated of a quarterback. You come after him, he can burn you, but it's Matt Ryan. He can't run. Like, we're just sitting back in coverage and he's killing us, So sometimes I don't think the sense of urgency that I would like to see defensively is there with Jack Del Rio, but the jury's out because, 2020, I think he benefited from a soft schedule, playing some bad quarterbacks and bad offenses. Last year, we knew the offenses that we were playing were going to be better. So we expected the defense to maybe, be a little bit worse, but overall you were expecting to feel good about their performances. That wasn't the case, especially early in the season. This year, we're getting another group of quarterbacks and offenses that we may be able to take advantage of. I want to see us take advantage of them.
Yeah. Jack Del Rio for me was a guy that I was elated about too. And this past year, like I said, I just felt like he wasn't as aggressive. And you speak to why isn't he creative? I mean, overloading the side with Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Why haven't we seen that? Along with Jack Del Rio, another name that isn't too fond in this community is Sam Mills. Defensive line coach Sam Mills, man. And we've all talked about how bad we think he is. Ryan Kerrigan film. When you have two athletic freaks, and Ryan Kerrigan was never the athletic guy that Chase Young and Montez Sweat is. So I already know you're not too happy with Sam Mills, man. But with this front four, man, I think they can get back to what they were in 2020. I really do. I think Chase Young is another guy that we don't know when he's going to come back. I don't think it's going to be week 1. No. I think when he comes back, he's going to be more humble. And Chase Young is a humble guy, as a regular human. But I feel like last year as a group, they kind of got pumped up. You hear they're going into training camp, hey, Chase, hey, Montez. What about setting the duo record? I remember exact video of a reporter asking them that question. Duo record. You got the media outlet. Dan Orlovsky is a guy I give credit to. There's not a lot of people that really talks, and Nate Burleson too is another guy that talks, good about us a lot. Those guys were saying all of that about this defense could be really, really good. Ryan Fitzpatrick just plays okay. This could be a playoff team. And I feel like they let that get to their head, man. And then we show up, or they weren't showing up. Chase Young was doing his commercials off the field. And then we show up to week 1, and it just was never the same that season. So I think the defense is going to be somewhat fine. And like you said, if we could just get the back end of 21. I mean, that Carolina game, some games down the stretch was really, really well. For us. And I want to talk about now the linebacker position, a position that we still feel like is very, very weak. Me personally, man, I like Cole Holcomb a lot. And I think he's going to do well now that he is the Mike linebacker, even though we know he was pretty much doing that role. He just didn't have the name last year. How are you feeling about the linebacker position as a whole and Cole Holcomb now being the Mike?
I think the linebacker position is one that probably holds the most intrigue for most fans, including myself. I believe in Cole Holcomb, wholeheartedly. I think he's the right man for the job. A lot of people dismissed him when they found out he was getting the nod as the full-time, middle linebacker. They were not thrilled about that. They wanted to draft someone, and that was fine. To each its own. My thing was, when he was given the opportunity, he took advantage of it. He played well. Wherever they put him, he's played well. He's responded. And he played middle linebacker at North Carolina, coming into the league. So it's not foreign to him. Yeah. My whole thing is Jamin Davis. I'm anxious to see now that they're just telling him, okay, you're not a middle linebacker. Just focus on playing outside linebacker for us. I want to see how he acclimates himself. Last year, his head was spinning. They tried to put too much on his plate too soon. This was a guy that was not a full-time starter at Kentucky until his final year. And the only reason he got in that position and role was because his roommate suffered a stroke. So if not for that, he would not have been the starter. He would not have burst onto the NFL scene and landscape and blow up the combine or the pro day and end up being a first-round pick. So it was just so much there with Jamin Davis last year, and he showed flashes, So I want to see if he can just put it together this year. He says he's so much more comfortable. I believe him, and now I just need to see it on the field. As far as the position as a whole, it's very worrisome because there's no depth. If anything happens to either one of those dudes, we are in trouble. And so the one position that we have to hope we stay healthy outside of quarterback, obviously, you want to stay healthy everywhere, but we can't afford an injury at the quarterback position, and we really can't afford any injuries at linebacker either.
Yeah, I mean, hey Lou, we're one injury away from Milo Eifel getting this solo shot again, like he did on Sunday Night Football.
At least they'll have a pitcher this time, right?
And then David Mayo's another guy.
Yeah.
I said this, and I think I believe this. I don't think we're going to go ahead and sign a guy right now. What I think we're going to do is wait until people start treading fat at other positions and other teams at the end of training camp and preseason, and we're just going to sign somebody, some depth pieces. They're talking about Anthony Barr. A lot of fans would love that, but that's not what we do, Yeah. And I think that's all we're going to do is just sign some depth guys from other people's roster, and I'm cool with that as long as it's not David Mayo and Milo, because like you mentioned, if either one of Jamin Davis or Cole Holcomb goes out, and we've seen that for part of last year when Cole Holcomb got hurt, and that wasn't pretty. Okay. Yeah. So we definitely need some depth there. The linebacker position is very, very concerning. Fat Bastard has another super chat, and this one is for you, Lou. He says, Lou, I need you to stop ducking me on the Discord.
I ain't been up there, man. I mean, I'm not ducking you. I just ain't been up there, man. I've been super busy. The off season is definitely the time where you try to get all your administrative affairs in order. So I just haven't had the time, man. But rest assured, eventually I'm gonna get up there.
Yeah, so Fat Bastard has another super chat, and this one's for you again. I don't watch boxing like that, so I'm gonna let you take the flow. Obviously, I know who Mike Tyson is. I know he's one of the greatest boxers, but that ain't my lane. So look, for you, y'all think Mike Tyson is the GOAT in the heavyweights? I'm gonna just say yes, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, Mike Tyson at his peak was a destructive boxer. I think he took people's hearts before even stepping in the ring. He had already won a lot of those fights before the opening bell had even rung. But there were so many other boxers at the heavyweight level that were much more sophisticated than Mike Tyson. And as we saw, when adversity hit, Mike was not, great at, handling what they call the moment of truth in boxing. And that's where you separate yourself, because you're going to get hit. At some point, you've been only guy that I've, haven't seen, and he got hit early in his career was Floyd Mayweather, but nobody really was able to hit him late in his career. But at some point, you're going to get hit. And if you're Roy Jones Jr., he was one of the greatest middleweights and light heavyweights we've ever seen. But he got touched on the jaw, and what we found out very quickly is he had a glass jaw. And you could say the same thing for Mike Tyson. And when things weren't going well for him, he resorted to biting people and doing stupid stuff. So, no, he's not the greatest heavyweight. He had a run, though, a stretch there where baddest man on the planet for sure, but not the greatest heavyweight. So
who would you say it was?
I mean, there's so many heavyweights that, were excellent boxers that, obviously you start with Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis and, even Joe Frazier's a better boxer than Mike Tyson and George Foreman, and so many guys that were really I think it was that to me. And obviously, I didn't watch these guys in their prime, but I've watched a lot of boxing, and I wouldn't call myself a historian, but I tend to go back in time to give me more of a working reference point and framework moving forward. And I felt like the best of the heavyweight division was probably the 50s into about the late 70s. And that's probably the group of boxers that you would be pulling, your best heavyweights of all time from.
Thank you again for the super chat, fat bastard. So now we're going to transition into a little bit of the ending of the show. We're going to end it off here very, very soon. Training camp, that's coming up in a mere 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. I'm very excited. I know you are too. But for the first time, in my opinion, in years, man, typically we have these training camp battles and who's going to be the quarterback. What is this receiving core going to look like? But for the first time in a while for me, there aren't really too many training camp battles that I could think of. And if I was to give you a 53-man roster prediction right now, I'm pretty sure it would come close to what the real one may look like at the end of the preseason. So for you, Lou, is there any specific position group / battle you're looking at with a close eye when training camp kicks off on the 27th?
I think where we'll see the most competition is in the secondary. I think there are some spots available on the back end of the defense. They drafted Christian Holmes out of Oklahoma State in the 7th round. Ron talked about him toward the end of minicamp and as one of the guys that kind of impressed him with his physicality, which I talked about watching him on tape. That's his thing. He likes to get up in your face and press, but he's not the fastest guy in the world. So, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But we play a lot of zone anyway, so he kind of fits what we like to do defensively. I don't think there's a ton of depth at corner necessarily, although there may be more depth that I'm giving them credit for. I'm a Danny Johnson fan. I think I'm a much bigger Danny Johnson fan than most. But I think the nickel corner position for us has been a topic of discussion. Obviously, Benjamin St-Juste has gotten work inside, and that was a big topic of discussion this offseason, him working inside, playing the slot. Would he just do it against bigger receivers like A.J. Brown, or is this something that they feel like they can get away with against any receiver? We heard about him breaking up a pass against Johan Dawson, and people got all excited and lost their minds. But at the end of the day, inside is, I think, where the real, discussion is. What are you going to do inside? And then the total depth of the position. I know last year we went out and got a veteran corner from Carolina and Corn Elder, and he's a guy that's still around. I think they like him. I think he may ultimately make this football team. But safety is the same thing. Obviously with the turnover at that position, no more Landon Collins, no more Deshaies or Everett. There may be some opportunities. Obviously, you draft Butler in the 3rd round. I think they really like Derek Forrest. They said he had a strong offseason. So that's another guy that may be stepping into a bigger role this year. Obviously, Troy Apke, Trap is going to be here. You know what I mean? So you still have to build a roster around that roster spot because you don't want to put him on the field in anything other than a special teams capacity. So it'll be interesting to see how they fill out the safety position. Is Jeremy Reeves still around? Is someone able to beat him out? And then just the back end of that cornerback position will be interesting as well.
Yeah, that is a position group that intrigues me a lot too, with the point of getting Percy Butler, Christian Holmes, and the guy that last year I want to know what he's up to now, but Torrey McTyer, he really intrigued me last year. I mean, when I saw this guy at the open practice, I'm like, who is this guy? Right. And he carried that into the preseason and up into his injury in week 4. I really would have loved to see them bring him back, but clearly that's not going to happen. So what we have on the roster secondary, that intrigues me. And they talked about Benjamin St-Juste being that nickel corner. I really like Ben St-Juste, man. I think he has the ability to be a really good corner in this league, man. He just has to stay healthy.
Right.
He talked about changing his helmet because, what he suffered 3 concussions? Or
I think it was 3 last year. Definitely 2 for sure.
Yeah, and it was crazy, man. Because he's talented. We seen that early and often in week 1 versus the Chargers last year, him holding his own.
He was the only one that played well against the Chargers.
William Jackson, he did catch an interception.
Yeah, the interception.
But we still got to throw that in there, But that secondary really intrigues me. Cam Curl, man, how good is he? I know a lot of people, they want to talk about Cam Curl, the 7th round pick. They told us, Lou, that if it wasn't for COVID, he would have been gone.
Yeah, he would have been gone a lot sooner. Yeah, we might have been
that guy is good. And I had a chance to sit down with his dad, man, and talk to his dad, man. Wonderful dad. And you just see why he's the kind of guy that he is, man. He has a wonderful family, man. So Cam Curl is that dude. Bobby McCain, a guy that I wasn't too high on, and I feel like that game, the last game of the season where he picked off, was it Jake Fromm twice? Right. I feel like that really saved him. I'm looking for a better year from Bobby McCain. And Percy Butler's a guy that they talked about just being a gunner, but as we found out, this guy is way more than just a gunner coming out of Louisiana. He's a guy that intrigues me too in that secondary position. And you talked about Christian Holmes too, and Troy Apke and the whole cornerback position. Now, for me, Lou, the position battle that kind of intrigues me, along with the secondary position, this may not be a battle to a lot of people, but it is to me, the running back room. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because, of course, you have AG, you have JD, and you have Brian Robinson. But for me, I'm gonna need y'all to put some respect on Jared Patterson's name. That's my guy. You know, we all got that guy on the team that we like a little bit more than everyone else. I mean, he's from my hometown in PG County, you know, so of course I'm gonna ride with him and Chase Young a lot more. But just I felt like he showed what he can do last year, man. And he's on the outside looking in, unfortunately, right now. Yeah. Come on, Lou, talk to me, man. Does my guy have a shot, or do you think they're just gonna roll with those three?
He definitely has a shot. Anything can happen, but if this roster goes according to plan, he's on the outside looking in. He'll be, you know, the first guy off the bench if need be, you know, break in case of an emergency. But he has zero shot of making his team if they're just keeping three backs and those three backs stay healthy. He's definitely not in play there. But you know, he's solid, but I feel like you can do better. If he's your third back, I feel like there's some meat being left, you know, on the bone. If he's your fourth running back, you're in a great spot. If one of those guys were to go down and he was the first guy to come off, and don't forget they really like Williams as well, who was on the roster last year. If you know he's the fourth guy on your roster, I think you can do a hell of a lot worse than Jared Patterson as your fourth running back. But you know, if he's cracking your top three, you probably got issues. And we did last year at the running back position. So I feel a lot better about the running back position this year than I did last year. And just to add another, you know, position that, you know, we don't talk about a lot because we're so excited about the receivers. Somebody's got to return punts. Okay, the guy that did it so well last year, Deandre Carter, no longer here, now a member of the Chargers. Somebody's got to do it. They signed my guy from Cincinnati, Alex Erickson. Thank you. So I remember last year when they signed DeAndre Carter, oh, he's not making a football team, whatever. You know, it was a throwaway signing, but somebody had to return punts. We're in the same predicament that we were in last year. They're going to put Dax Milne back there. They're going to put, you know, a slew of other guys back there to field punts, but Alex Erickson is the one natural kickoff and punt returner that we have on the roster. And if they're keeping six receivers, we already know the five. Dax Milne does not have to make this football team. You know, they like him. We like him. We want to see more of him. But somebody's got to return punts. So it could be Alex Erickson. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I agree with you with that. I talked about that too. And did DeAndre Carter leave for a bigger role as a receiver? Was it the Chargers, right?
Yeah, it was the Chargers. I don't necessarily know if it was a bigger role as much as it was I don't think we offered him. I don't think we offered him anything. I mean, truth be told, I think we kind of just, you know, it's like, all right, dude, you know, if somebody out there wants you, go ahead, get your bread. If not, hey, we here, you know. And, you know, somebody gave him an opportunity, so he took it.
Yeah, so Alex Erickson, you know, that position, returning punts and kicks, I talked about that a lot. I don't think they're just going to want to get a guy just to return punch. You're going to have to show that you can actually play some slot or play some receiver or something like that, or Danny Johnson, who was a guy that did it for us in 2019. You're going to have to make this roster as a cornerback, similar to what DeAndre Carter did last year. If he wasn't able to show his ability to be a good receiver and didn't have a good training camp like he did last year, because I remember they said something about him having a crazy grab in training camp or just having a good training camp. If he didn't have a good training camp as a receiver, I don't think he would have been our kick return / punt return. So I think that's the same ballpark we're in this year. I think if Alex Erickson goes out there and shows that he can provide a little bit as a receiver, then he's going to be your guy. I think Dax Milne is a guy that they may lead to a little bit more just because he already shown that he can be a receiver. Danny Johnson is the guy that I want to be the kick returner because for me, Lou, yeah, kick returns are great, but they're so unless you're Cordell Patterson, Jamal Agnew, how often are you returning kicks to the
Right.
house? Yes, we got one last year,
right.
but you're not doing that much. I just want the ball at 25. And with this offense, just let my offense go to work.
Yeah.
Danny Johnson never had to worry about him fumbling the kickoffs, punt returns. Just put Danny Johnson back there for me, just because I'm with you. I'm a big Danny Johnson fan, and I think he has the ability to be that slot cornerback. He showed that in the Packers game for me last year.
Oh man, he was awesome.
So that's how I feel about that position. But again, going back to the main point, there's not really that many battles this year because the roster is pretty much set, like overall.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it. There's not much more to add to that. They did a really good job. Ron has been building the depth of this football team since he got here. That was the one thing he started on immediately. A lot of people didn't love the moves he made back in 2020 when he first got here, along with Kyle Smith. But those moves were impactful. There was a lot of guys like Wes Schweitzer and J.D. McKissick and Logan Thomas and there's a lot of those types of guys, Cornelius Lucas, and everybody was looking around like, who are these dudes? But those were the guys that ended up being foundational pieces for depth. And then some guys that actually stepped up and had to start and played well for us. So the depth has been there since he got here, continue to build on that. Now we're adding in those frontline guys like Johan Dawson that we feel like could be true difference makers. And so the stage has been set.
Now it's time to go out there and perform, man.
That's right.
So the line that you talked about, the depth pieces, we got some new guys: Trey Turner, Andrew Norwell. Trey Turner's a guy, and our boy Wes Schweitzer, man. I love me some Wes, man. I said he showed enough to be the starter back in 2020 when he mauled that Giants dude. I mean, you see the crazy workouts this guy's doing.
Yeah,
like, how? Why? You're not supposed to be that huge and being able to be that flexible, man. Come on. That guy is a stud, bro. And I would love for West to be the starter. I think he deserves to, honestly. But since he provides so much positional effects, last year had to step in to play center for us when Tyler Larson went down. I don't think he's going to get that starting gig. I think it may be Trey Turner, Andrew Norwell. But Trey Turner, although he is a former Pro Bowler, he's not coming off of the best of season. But he's pairing back up with offensive line coach John Masco. So is Andrew Norwell. How are you feeling about the depth there and the starting five there at the offensive line position?
Same exact way I felt last year. I said this last year. I don't know who the starting five is going to be. We projected it, though, and we pretty much hit the nail on the head. But, going into the offseason last year, we thought Wes Schweitzer was going to be the starter at left guard. Ended up being Eric Flowers. We didn't know that they were going to trade for him. So that was one of the camp battles that we had last year. But at the end of the day, I told you last year, I don't know what five are going to start because we traded for Eric Flowers. We then signed Charles Leno Jr. We still had Morgan Moses for like a brief amount of time, and then we got rid of him. But then we drafted Sam Cosmi. We had so many linemen. And then you had Cornelius Lucas coming off of a strong 2020. We had all these tackles. We had all these guards. And I'm like, look, I don't really care what five you put on the field. I feel confident that you're going to get a group that's going to go out there and perform adequately. And that's exactly what we did last year. And we had injuries. We had to shuffle things around, and we still got adequate play out of the offensive line. Stands for a couple of games like Dallas. We got really good play out of the offensive line for the most part last year. So I kind of feel the same way this year. It doesn't matter. And look, the only two positions that were available were the two guard spots. Obviously, you still got both of those centers, Larson and Chase Rouillet coming back from injury. So you might have to start the season off with either Keith Ishmael or, more likely than not, Wes Schweitzer starting at center. So we'll see, because those guys, they're kind of still, rehabbing, listening to Chase Rouillet. I don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. So I feel good about those guys being back with John Matsko, and they played their best football with him. I just feel confident. Whomever we put on the field, Matsko is going to get the most out of them.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. That's one thing about Washington, man. We go from Bill Callahan to John Masco, and I'm comfortable with whatever five we put out there just because I know he's going to be able to get the best out of these guys. So Fat Bastard with another super chat, he says, Which pick intrigued y'all besides Johan and for him it is Percy Butler. I already spoke on it. Cole Turner for me. What about you?
I mean, I didn't have a problem with any of the picks. Honestly, I was a big fan of Brian Robinson at Alabama. You know how I felt about Peyton Barber and his role on the team and the significance that held. I thought it was downplayed, and it hurt us last year. People would say, "Oh, we converted this amount of third downs, fourth short, this, that, and third." Trust me, there were a lot of opportunities that went by the wayside because we couldn't convert in short yardage situations. I love Brian Robinson. I love that pick. I think he's going to instantly come in and bolster the back end of that running back room.
Yeah, Brian Robinson, the pick was really solid. Fedarian Mathis was a pick that we all agreed on that we didn't like, just for the simple fact you don't have to take a rotational guy that early. But then we later found out, the Deron Payne debacle may not be getting paid, and this guy may have to step in and be bigger than just a rotational piece. But we got spoiled with Matt Ioannidis and Tim Settle, with having those guys. So, yeah, I agree. I think he's going to come in here and be really, really solid for us. I like the running back room now. I feel way more comfortable, even though I'm a big Jared Patterson guy. I'm still got to be realistic. I'm comfortable with these three guys. J.D. McKissick turning down the Bills, man. How great was that for us? Him basically having a guaranteed playoff spot, just to come back here, it has to make us feel good. Now, I am mad at J.D. for changing his number. 41 was hard on him. I really like that. It was different. Only person you see that was Alvin Kamara. Yeah. So we're almost done. Almost gonna get you out of here, Lou. Have a couple more, just a little bit to talk about left. A little bit about training camp. So I want to talk about the training camp headed into the preseason. Is there anything that you really are looking for from the preseason, or do you not really put too much into the preseason, just because for the simple fact that it's preseason?
Yeah, I don't put a lot into the preseason. You want to see guys go out there, get work. The biggest thing for me is just stay healthy. That's really all I care about. As a fan, yeah, you want to see these players on the field. You want to see them. I mean, Chase got a sack the first preseason game, the first possession of the first preseason game last year. We lost our minds. What did that translate to? So Ryan Fitzpatrick actually didn't look bad in the preseason last year. Again, what did that translate to? So I don't put too much stock into the preseason, other than I just need dudes to be upright when the season gets started.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw that up close and personal last year. The Ravens preseason, they were just dropping like flies, and that translated into the season for them. And the last thing, Lou, I have to bring this up because that's all they've been commenting on my videos. The situation with Dax Milne that's been going on. Are you aware of the thing that's going on with him and Zach Wilson?
With Zach Wilson
and all that, man?
I'm about to talk about it on my podcast, literally after this show.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you guys stay tuned for Lou's point, man. It's crazy, that's a lot, and I'll be tuned in for that just to hear your point. But Louie T, man, I appreciate you for coming on, my good sir. It means a lot to have a guy like you on the platform, man. And again, I thank you. You're doing great work over there, and I'm going to stay tuned and watch you. And hopefully, these boys can give us something to be happy about this year, man.
Yeah, well, for sure, man. I'm excited, as much of the fan base is as well. As I always caution you, sip slow. All right. I'm not telling you to put the cup down. I'm not telling you to don't drink. I'm just telling you to sip slow. You all have been fans of this organization for quite some time. You've seen the highs, you've seen the lows, many more lows than highs. You know that this thing can go sideways quickly. So just prepare yourself for anything. Keep your guard up, but also enjoy the moment, because I think this has a chance to be a really good season. The start of something. I'm hoping it's not just a season. I hope it's the start of us winning consistently in Washington.
Yeah, because we need it. We need it bad, especially me. I ain't experiencing nothing. The short 2012 and 2015, cool, but I need consistent winning here in Washington. So yeah, man, there you have it. As always, it's been your boy Juan Gotti. Again, I appreciate Louie T for coming on the channel. Subscribe to him, and the link will be down below in the description. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been your boy Juan Gotti and Louie T. I'm out. Peace.